Ladies and gentlemen, I might seem like I'm sitting on the bus right now, but I had a very amazing text message sent to me today. I woke up to 40 plus texts. Will Compton, myself, and another individual were speaking for what seemed like it was biblical, whatever was going on. I was given the opportunity to sit with this gentleman to talk about an upcoming event that we will get into right after this. That event is not the big game, but the championship game is upon us. But one team has already won it all. That team is Chevy. And its star player, the Silverado, a truck with unstoppable grit and determination. According to J.D. Power, Chevy trucks have earned more vehicle quality awards than any other brand, and that is some serious hardware. Do us a favor, head over to Chevy.com to learn more. Silverado, as strong and dependable as the people who drive them. For J.D. Power 2022 U.S. award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. With that being said, the individual that was in that text message was the legendary, the electric, the amazing Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler, everybody, let's give him a round of applause.
What's up, boys?
What's
up, boys?
Now, Mike has been a boy. You've been a boy for a while. You've been on this podcast. This has got to be the fourth time. I woke up this morning, fucking sleep still in my eyes, and you are laying out the fact that you have a big fight coming up. And I don't want to say it. I would like you to announce it to the people who you are going to fight.
Here it is. First time on the mic, first time announced here on the bus with the boys. Team Chandler versus Team McGregor on the Ultimate Fighter. My team versus his team. Stuck in Vegas with this individual for the next 6 weeks or so. Then it airs on ESPN. Then we fight later on this year. That's the plan. That's what's happening. You heard it here first on the bus. Let's go.
Let's go, boys. This is incredible. And there's been whispers, there's been murmurings the whole time. Who's Conor going to fight when he came back? He's a bionic man now.
Yep.
He's got the plate in his leg. He's got titanium shin bone. So there is some more things you have to worry about when you go to fight this individual. How did the process work? So you finished your fight with Poirier, correct?
Yes.
Could have gone either way.
Yep.
Didn't go your way. We had an outstanding podcast with you earlier when Will was on the bus. You had a great insight, a great mindset of everything. People can go check that out whenever they would like to. But now we're sitting here. We whispered at each other, hey, how cool it'll be to fight Conor. After the pod, we were sitting there as buddies talking. 2 nights ago, you were at my house. We're whispering, talking, hey, this might happen, that might happen. And now it's here. How did you and the UFC get to this conclusion?
Man, well, there's a lot of moving parts. Obviously, when you're talking about a reality TV show, the Ultimate Fighter, for those that don't know, it's going to be 12 weeks. My team versus his team, our team fighting each other. I'm coaching these young aspiring fighters, or maybe they're bounce backs coming back. They got kicked out of the organization or lost, came back. My team versus his team. So we already start this thing with competition, right? So there's a lot of different moving parts. Obviously, with a guy like Conor McGregor, who is literally one of the biggest sports names on the planet, there's a lot of stuff to figure out. For me, it's not as hard to figure out. My answer is yes, let's do this thing. I've wanted to fight Conor since the very beginning. You guys have heard me on the microphone. Conor McGregor. Like I'm there, dude. I'm there for it. I want the biggest stage possible. So it's just been a little bit back and forth and a patience game. You know, when you're talking about something of this magnitude and how big this is, somewhat of a kind of a dream fight. You want that big opportunity. You know, it's like almost like they're drawing out of a hat, like whether or not you're going to the Super Bowl. You're like, oh, I gotta wait freaking 72 hours. I gotta wait a week, for them to pull this thing out of a hat. Is it going to happen? Is it not? I can't do anything right now to speed up the process. I'm at the mercy of the patience that needs to be showed. So a little bit of back and forth, couple phone calls. Got the phone call. It's me. So we're excited to go out to Vegas and film this thing.
When you talk about patience, sitting there waiting on a phone call, is the phone call more, hey, what does Conor want to do? Or is it what the UFC wants to do, or a combination of the two?
It's a combination of both. I can tell you this. I know Conor has expressed interest in fighting me leading up to this. And
even before the fight.
Yeah, even before this. Yeah, I mean, and that was always my approach to it. Like I wasn't gonna trash talk him, call him names, do the things that everybody else do. Actually try to poke the bear and pick the fight. Conor doesn't need to fight anybody. Conor doesn't necessarily want to fight anybody who calls him a name. If anything, that deters him from it. So that was always my game. It's always been respect. And then we heard some rumblings that Conor released it himself that he was going to be coaching on the Ultimate Fighter. And then immediately I thought, it's got to be me. This has got to be the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got a phone call, soon thereafter. Hey, would you be willing to do this? Absolutely. And then it was a couple days later that I finally, through that patience of almost 4 or 5 days, which was one of the longest almost week of my life. But got the phone call, got the nod.
So when you're talking about patience, you're talking about it took a week. It was like a week of patience, which a week can be a lifetime.
Oh,
shit, a day can be a lifetime when you're talking about an experience that you're about to undergo.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not only doing a cage match with arguably the most prolific fighter that the UFC's ever seen, but also a reality TV show.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole lot coming down the Chandler pipe.
Yeah, well, and this checks a lot of the boxes for me. I mean, number one, I've always wanted to do the Ultimate Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to be a reality TV star? No, but do I want to be
No one does.
submerged and stuck in that spot in between the four walls of the training facility, having my house out in Vegas, kind of taking off my fighter hat and putting on like kind of the coach hat, the analyst hat, breaking down my team. I'm going to take, I don't know how many guys it is. I don't know if it's 8 guys, 16 guys. Maybe we can get confirmation from the boys, but something like that. I'll have like 16 guys on my team. He'll have 16 guys on his team, and then it'll whittle down to a winner of the Ultimate Fighter who ultimately gets a contract with the UFC. So someone's future is in my hands. I potentially have the opportunity to coach, motivate, and build an individual into a guy who gets that UFC contract, and who knows, may become UFC champion someday. So I take that very seriously. So I've always wanted to do the Ultimate Fighter. It's Conor McGregor, the biggest fight I could possibly ask for, brightest lights, biggest stage possible. 170. It's going to be at 170 is what they're talking about. That's a dream come true. I don't like making 155. I'm sitting here hovering around 190 right now. I'd love to fight at 170.
It's a fantastic 190, by the way, boys.
And then, fantastic. And hopefully it's in Vegas. Conor historically only fights in Vegas, so it's most likely going to be in Vegas. So that kind of checks all the boxes. I've been signed with the UFC now for almost 2.5 years, and I haven't fought in Vegas yet, which is kind of crazy. So I want to
last time on the bus.
Yeah, so I want to experience that Vegas fight week. It's the hometown of the UFC, and it's a Conor McGregor fight week. So it's going to be, when we say like 10 times different than any other fight, it's going to be 100 times different than any other fight.
I would love to hit on that in a second, but we'll go back to the Ultimate Fighter for a second. So you have 18 guys, you said?
It's something like
12 to 18.
16
total. So
16
eight
guys
on my team, 8 on his team.
Yeah. Right.
And then sometimes they do 2 different weight classes or whatnot. It could be guys and
4
girls.
fights?
Actually, that they don't ever do that, actually. Yeah, 4, maybe 6. Is there not like 32 and then you win the fight to get onto the show, and then we choose
like a March Madness bracket with the Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah, it's like a tournament style.
Yeah.
And but yeah, you choose your fighters. Like this is, you like draft your guys. Like this is my number 1 pick.
Yeah.
And all that stuff.
Oh, that's a nice
So
deal.
Taylor, can you put your feet down?
Yes. So you're doing the Ultimate Fighter. You're going into this process. It's one thing to fight somebody. It's another thing to spend 7 weeks with this individual.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Conor McGregor talks a lot of shit. You don't necessarily talk so much shit. You're like the Andy Samberg at a roast, right? You'll roast yourself, and you're much more PG about it, which is hilarious, because then you go in the octagon, you're like a bat out of hell. You're like a goddamn pit bull out there. So how do you think you're going to navigate these 7 weeks? Because regardless of how well poised you can stay, there's going to be times he gets under your skin. But how do you plan on getting under his skin as well?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, being at one press conference for an hour is one thing, or being at one, event for an hour is one thing. But being, like you said, stuck with this guy where you can't get away from him. He's in every single, he's not going to be in our practice facility when we're practicing or whatnot, but we're going to be doing challenges. We're going to have to go and do things, sit down with Dana together, do all these different things together, with the knowledge that we are going to, we are going to eventually put on the 4-ounce gloves and then fight each other. I've wanted to fight Conor forever. He's wanted to fight me as well. So there's there's going to be the tension. There's going to be the animosity. He's quick-witted, which I'm excited for. I've already gone through this in my mind the last 2 years, even before I came to the UFC. Exactly. It's like, I've seen him. I've seen the snarky things he's going to say. Don't know exactly what he's going to say, but I know how I'm going to most likely feel when he does say something. I do think Conor rarely goes that, he doesn't cross the line that much unless he has been pushed to cross the line. I'm obviously not a guy who's going to push him across that line, but there's going to be a lot of banter back and forth. There's going to be a lot of, I think, different shades of me, different sides of me, different things that might somewhat break the character of who people think I am, but not in an over the top kind of way. That's going to be must-see TV It's going to get under Conor's skin, and it's going to build a fight that I think could possibly be one of the biggest pay-per-views we've ever seen, because a lot of times it's just been the build-up leading up to a fight of the UFC promoting it and Conor and his opponent promoting it. But us being on ESPN for 10, 12 weeks straight, whatever it is, everybody getting to see and watch this story play out, it's going to lead to a huge pay-per-view number. So both of us know that, and both of us know not only are we both chomping at the bit excited to compete against each other, but we both know how to sell a fight. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be enemy territory. Like
there's no question about
it. You go there and it's like, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm going to get to coach some kids and hopefully build them into a star someday. But also you got this guy over here that you can't wait to punch in the face. You can't wait to freaking pick up and slam. You can't wait to watch him do his walk and see all the stuff and then be like, Chandler's here to steal the show and ruin the party.
Ruin the party.
Ruin the party.
Right, because that's UFC's golden boy. Like, nothing against Dana. Like, it is what it is. You have your top dog. NFL has Patrick Mahomes. At one time had Tom Brady.
Yep.
And then you kind of just ride the coattails of that for a little bit. And they've been riding Conor, awaiting a long time comeback for him ever since he broke his leg.
And this is perfect, by the way, for Conor to come back. And that's what he even said in his announcement, like it's full immersion. You know, he's forced to be put into a scenario where it's like, okay, well, I have to train every day. I'm going to train every day, watching these young guys. Because people get Conor mixed up too. They can be like, well, how, it's hard to get him in his sweats when he's wearing like silk pajamas and silk bed sheets and all. It's like Conor's like an athlete and a competitor at heart. And we've talked about this too. He takes the toughest fights. Am I the easiest fight for him to take? Could he have chosen to fight Tony Ferguson or one of these other guys? Absolutely.
Right.
He's fighting me.
Yeah,
it's not an easy fight.
Yeah, when you told me, when you gave me this information, I knew we were going to sit down in an hour. So I started looking up stuff real quick, and Tony Ferguson did come up.
Yeah.
And there was an article that said UFC fans are scared that Conor McGregor will kill Tony Ferguson. Like, if he goes to fight him.
Yeah, but that's what, if you're Conor, wouldn't you want that? But you don't. But people misunderstand Conor. Conor loves the competition. He likes the attention, the bright lights, the cameras, he was just a star in Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal. Like he's that guy who should, by most people's conventional wisdom, come back and take an easier tune-up fight, especially after shattering your leg. And he chooses me.
Yeah.
Or the UFC obviously had a lot to do with that as well. But he could have easily said, no, Chandler's too much of this, too much of that, too freaking nuts. It's too crazy. Let me fight somebody who's a little bit slower, a lot less power, less athletic, not going to pick me up and slam me out my head. But here we are, Chandler versus McGregor.
Yeah, so you're breaking all that down. You're saying all these things that Conor could have done instead of fighting you, which would have been the safer bet.
Yep.
Obviously, you seem very confident in this type of situation. Why do you think, through the process of when you're looking at a guy when he has literally everyone he can choose from in the pool of his weight class, he chooses you. And not only did he choose you, he chose a guy that has tactically, strategically gone after Conor in a completely different way than everyone else does. Everyone else talks shit. Hey, Conor, you're scared to fight me, blah, blah, blah. And Conor sits on his pedestal of money like Scrooge McDuck and just laughs at everybody. Yeah. So why do you think at the end of the day it came down to, I want to fight Michael Chandler?
The funny thing is, I do think Conor is also a more traditional martial artist. He quotes Bruce Lee. He does the karates and those other like more traditional martial arts as well. I come from a wrestling background where it's a lot different, but respect is a huge thing. The way people carry themselves is a huge thing. And obviously Conor has his cinematic side where he gets people to click, gets people to watch, says things that make people feel something and well up emotion. But ultimately it goes back to respect and respecting the sport. I think Conor, because we have this tendency when people make a ton of money or we get this huge amount of fame, we have a tendency as human beings to say, well, he's lost the edge or he's lost the respect or he's lost this, because he can write his own ticket to whatever he wants in life. But ultimately at his core, strip that all away. He is a martial artist who not only commands respect, but constantly looks for the people who also command respect or deserve respect. I believe Conor and I have a mutual respect for each other, but all of that goes out the window and you completely forget about the respect once that cage door closes. Now, leading up to the fight, you're going to see shades of that as well. The stepping stones, the building blocks leading up to said fight. But ultimately, Conor wants a challenge. He wants the biggest stage, the brightest lights, all of the cameras. Give me all the smoke of all of the different media, right? That's what he wants. But ultimately, he wants somebody also, a dance partner in mixed martial arts. You have to have a good opponent, not just a name, not just a trash talker, but somebody who there's a little bit of fear, a little bit of scare. Like I could go out there and sleep this dude in a minute. And there's a lot of people who think I could do that. I could go out there, pick him up, slam him, and freaking choke him out in a minute. There's a lot of people who think that when you talk about skill set to skill set, that's what Conor wants. He doesn't want to go out there against Tony Ferguson or one of these other guys who he is a heavy favorite. He likes to be the underdog. He likes to be counted out. So I think all of those different factors play into it. And ultimately, here we are. And I think it's a fight that excites both of us, and the fans get to be the beneficiaries of it.
Yeah. And as a person who's just like watching from the outside, I've never been big into UFC in the last couple of years. I've gotten more into it. A name as you're
Because of
talking,
me, hopefully.
mostly because of you. Yes, absolutely. I mean, being able to be around you and then watch your story. When I met you, you were at Bellator. You were at the top of the game at Bellator. And then I was with you when you signed your contract, not physically with you, but friends with you. And watching that growth, it's definitely became huge. JP in the back there, did you work for UFC or you?
No, I was just doing stuff down at the gym that he worked out at.
Yeah.
And so I met him before I met y'all.
It was funny. Yeah. Right before he's like, dude, I'm going to go up there in Nashville and go on the bus. I'm like, no way, dude. That's my boys.
That's
So
fucking
crazy.
awesome. So it's been a crazy ride to see and kind of just sit in. It's a really cool thing about living in Nashville. You get to be around these people who are growing or have already grown, and you get to become friends with them and get an intro to their life. And it's been incredible. This is going to be not only an awesome experience for you, but for me and Will and our families and how we've all come together in a certain way. It's going to be awesome to see. The names you keep saying, you keep bringing up Tony Ferguson. Why not Nate Diaz? And I will get off
Great idea.
everybody else in a little bit, but I want to check the boxes of why did it come down to Michael Chandler when he could have had that trilogy of Nate Diaz and take the early tune-up fight, which we've already covered.
Yep.
So why not?
It's a
do
great
that?
idea because honestly, I think Diaz checks both of those boxes.
Right. You said
he's a
fear.
tune-up
He's a
fight.
tough guy.
Well, but no.
Oh, you think the opposite?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a tough guy, but stylistically, Conor's so much better than him. So I think Conor sees that more of a tune-up fight. I truly believe. But he is very, very tough. He doesn't get knocked out. He keeps on freaking moving forward. And obviously there's the backstory, the history. Conor versus Diaz trilogy is going to happen eventually. Was right now the right time? It possibly could have been, to be honest. I mean, that was something I was definitely worried about in this whole scenario. I'm like, well, but I'm also, I think, self-aware enough and also respect the UFC enough. And I actually told them that, like, hey, I completely understand if that's a direction that y'all want to go, if you did go that way. Because they never brought it up to me. I'm like, well, I know what I'm going up against. There's other fights out there, tune-up fights, freaking these other people who might be, more fun or more spastic or crazy on the Ultimate Fighter, more than me. But ultimately, I do think it came down to the exact opposite of that. I think when you're on ESPN, it's got to have a certain level of professionalism with a little bit of animosity, a little bit of tension, a little bit of build the story, a little bit of get in your face, a little bit of, that storyline of reality TV on ESPN as well. So, but that's a great thought. Then that was one of my thoughts immediately. And that's always been my thought, even when I'm calling out Conor for all these, years now, 2 years now, I would possibly get passed over for, a Nate Diaz. But ultimately it worked out. Here we are, and fight Conor hopefully later this year.
That is incredible, dude. So
worked out.
you you do the Ultimate Fighter with him. You'll be basically locked in a room with him for however many weeks. You do that, you separate, you go to camp from then on out.
Yep.
And how long is your camp usually?
Camp starts 12 weeks out, but that's 4 weeks kind of at home, really just starting to build up my cardio base, starting to create some skills, starting to eat right, and starting to think, okay, hey, I have a fight scheduled. But my actual training camp itself, when I'm in Florida training with my team, is 8 weeks.
Now, does anything change for you in the beginning of when we started talking here 19 minutes ago? You said lights are bigger. This is 10 times bigger of a stage. I've always wanted this. So everything seems maximized. Everything seems a lot bigger. How do you take it and bring it back to, hey, this is a giant moment, but how do I turn it back to, this is what I've been doing my whole entire life? Are there things you're going to change that you did in past camps? Or do you think you found a solid remedy for success?
It's a great question because
Thank you. I was really proud of that question.
Actually, because I think a lot of people, and I think this is a mistake people make in all areas of life, whether it be business, relationships, athletics, whatever, the magnitude of the moment doesn't have to change what got you there. You know, obviously this is a huge, important fight for me. I beat Conor. There could be a rematch. This could turn into the biggest trilogy of all time, right?
Oh,
This has huge implications, right? But ultimately, I pride myself on a guy who does the small things right, compounding interest leading up to the big opportunities and getting the big prize. And I've always done that. I focus 80-90% on myself. And that last 20% of, okay, hey, here's what Conor is good at. He's a southpaw. He's got a hard, straight left hand. He does some spinning kick. He's got these things that this is his reach. These little things that we can kind of like look at under a fine tooth or go through with a fine tooth comb or under a microscope. But for the most part, I know how to train. I've been doing it for 22 years. And ultimately, quieting the noise, because there's going to be so much more noise leading up to this fight than there ever has been. But ultimately, doing the exact same thing that I always have, making sure that the magnitude of the moment doesn't change the present every single day, and just win the day every single day. Same training partners, same team, a little bit of a different game plan. And I will say, as we talked, it's not 100% guaranteed, but it's trending like this fight is going to be at 170, which I love. So that takes a lot of the pressure off of me from the diet standpoint. So from going from 186 to 190 down to 155 is not an easy task. And it takes extreme discipline when it comes to my weight, fasting, and working at a calorie deficit essentially for 8 weeks. I'm not going to have to do that, but I will be sure that I show up on fight night looking exactly like I always do. I'm not going to be looking fluffy. I'm going to be just as
brother.
ripped,
Ain't nobody
just as
worried
big.
about you looking fluffy.
Yeah. It's more like I'm going to be
like an action figure. He's like, I promise I won't look fluffy. It's like, that's the last thing we're worried about.
To my fans, all right? I'm not going to be looking fluffy. If I fight at 170, I'm going to be just as like ripped as normal, but I just won't have to cut that last 10, 12 pounds of water,
right?
You know, which is always kind of a silly thing anyway. So
is there, when you're watching the process of Conor McGregor, he breaks his leg, and
I was at that fight, by the way.
You were?
Yeah.
Takes himself out of the USADA. Obviously comes back 3-4 months later looking like an absolute fucking unit. He's playing the game within the rules. Now, whether the rules are correct or not, he's playing the game within the game. Exactly. Do you think that changes? Because eventually he's got to come off. The testosterone levels have to, and this is all on the assumption that he was taking something. Whether he was or was not, it doesn't matter. But he looks like he was. Do you think that changes anything from what his game plan might be with you, having more power, more strength, everything that extra testosterone can bring you in these types of situations?
It's interesting because truthfully, this is the biggest he's ever been, which means he's a brand new fighter. You know, all of his 30 fights prior to this are completely different, right? He was always long and lean at 145 big time. He was still long and lean at 155. Now here at 170, he has fought at 170 before, but he fought as a 55 pounder. He just didn't cut weight for it. They're both basically 55 pounders that just don't cut weight. Ultimately now he's put on muscle. So he's going to be a completely different, this is going to be his first fight that he's actually a legitimate 170 pounder. So, I think, I mean, the boy's big, you know, he's looking tan and jacked, right? And one thing I will say to point out, as a guy who has constantly been accused of or said, hey, this guy's got to be taking something, I would never disrespect somebody by saying he's was doing something, because I've been a guy who hasn't, but looks like I have my entire career,
which is outstanding.
You know, so which is great, but ultimately, it's a brand new fight for him because he's 190 pounds dropping to 170, whereas before he was 175 dropping to 170, put on a lot of muscle. So you got two dudes who are big, thick, fast, love to start fast, want to go out and finish each other in the first round, and we'll see who takes a backward step first. I got a sneaky suspicion it's going to be Conor McGregor.
Oh, big, thick, fast dudes getting after it in the octagon, boys.
Yeah, right? We got
a banger ahead of us.
Maybe later on, right after the summer, get a nice little tan.
Tan.
Maybe we reschedule the Cabo trip.
Yeah,
and get a nice little tan.
I'm always down to go back to Cabo, brother. Always down. For those of you who don't know, because you guys don't, Chandler and his family were supposed to come to Cabo February 15th through the 19th. 2 nights ago, Mike's at my house, and his Bree, your wife, kind of outs him like he might not be able to go, and he kind of tucks his tail. Like, I might have something, and then me and Will start poking.
Yeah, hey,
so what are you doing? What are you doing? He's like, I don't want to. He's like, I might be doing Ultimate Fighter against Conor McGregor. I'm not sure. We might fight in the fall.
Maybe
we'll like, what the fuck? Yeah. Fast forward 2 days later, we're sitting on the bus, and all those manifestations have come true.
Yep.
When you look at this fight with Conor, he has his skill set, you have your skill set. Let's talk about where you think you have the edge on Conor. What makes this where your fans, and like you've alluded to a couple of times, that you can take this guy out in 1 minute? What is your it factor versus him?
Well, I do start fast. I get the range. Yes, I do get the range really quickly. I like fighting a little bit of a taller guy, and I love fighting southpaws. The reason being, our feet are essentially almost touching each other because we have the same. He has his right foot forward. I have my left foot forward, which means both of our straight shots, like my straight right hand, his straight left hand, we're both in enemy territory at all times. So you see a lot more power shots when you see an orthodox versus a southpaw fighter. So I think even with him being 170, I think I have more power, and I do think I'm faster than him, especially because I'm going to be the same body composition I always have been for the last 30 fights, whereas he has a new body composition, which may or may not slow him down a little bit. Obviously, he's going to have the next however many months to be able to train, get used to it, and he's already been training. He's been teasing this comeback for a while. So grappling department, wrestling department, and overall cardio and toughness department, I think I'm better in all areas. He's better at the trash talk, and he's better at getting in guys' heads. So it remains to be seen, and I do not. So
let me just break this down real quick. Yeah. Everything in the octagon, you're better than him
better
at.
Than him at everything.
Everything outside the octagon.
Here's a couple things that get overlooked when it comes to footwork angles, reaction time, counter shots. Conor is phenomenally better than me at. When it comes to poise and the big moment, he's phenomenally better than me at, because I've fought big fights before, Madison Square Garden, UFC title fights, but this is bigger. And he's done this 20 something times. I've done this 0 times, right? Not to mention the pressure, the animosity, the tension, the media obligations, the lead up, the chinking, the chipping. Yeah. Well, I did two different catchphrases, like the chinking my armor, but like chipping away at my armor over a 12-week, like a 12-week span. Actually, now if it's 6-8 months, whatever it could be, that's something he's grown accustomed to over all these years, and he's used to all of that. Where I have to navigate that for the first time.
Yeah, he's been callous.
Yes, and 90% of this fight and every other fight prior and in the future is mental. So leading up to that is why that's part of the reason why Conor has looked so awesome over the years, and how he created the mystique of Conor McGregor is that he has broken people and beat people before they stepped into the octagon. So it remains to be seen, am I that mentally tough? Am I able to compartmentalize it? Am I able to visualize the magnitude of the moment before it happens? And these are all, sounds like I'm over here like with a lot of humility and a lot of like candor or a lot of vulnerability, but it truly is. That's truly what it is. If I take off, it's me fighting. That's what I would say about anybody else. That's the mystique of fighting Conor. Right. You have to be able to weather that storm mentally and emotionally and spiritually before you actually have to weather the storm physically inside the octagon.
So if we're kids in the playground and you guys start pushing and shoving each other, you're saying that fight's Mike Chandler 10 out of 10. Now, you get 6 months of talking trash on the playground. That's when the playing field starts to get leveled in Conor's history. I'm just trying to keep up with you because we started this whole thing with basically in the octagon, you're better aside from the angles you're talking about and setting up shots. I believe it was like, he seems like
striking in his length, his timing, his ability to miss him slip a punch by a quarter of an inch. These are all things that I do not do well at all. Yeah. Do I have power? I have power, and I can knock you out, put your lights out if I land it, but it's not straight, precise. Conor went on after he knocked out Jose Aldo, he talked about precision and timing and speed and all of these different things, and that's the way he looks at fighting. Whereas I'm like, I see a nail and I have a hammer and I want to hit that nail as hard as I possibly can with as least amount of strikes as I possibly can. So you got two different schools of thought. So it just depends on who lands that shot first, and it could very well be Conor. And I have it. You go back to the Eddie Alvarez fight. The way Eddie overextended himself, Conor got out of the way by a gnat's eyelash. We're talking a millimeter, and then hit him with a 4-piece combo. Eddie wakes up, not the champion anymore. These are the kind of clashes, and these are the kind of exchanges that Conor gets in that people aren't ready for. So if I land a shot, he could go out, might go out, most likely will go out. The problem is landing the shot on Conor.
Yeah.
When he is that good at, for 20-something years, he's ducked and dodged and dipped and dodgeball.
Yeah, but also since 2018, he's 1-3. So
Yep.
are we blowing Conor up as if it was before 2018 and this is just leading because he's built this brand for himself and how precise he can be? Or is this still real what Conor is?
I think it's really who Conor is. I also think never underestimate like the human spirit either too, especially when you add the ego. I think it's not a dig to say Conor has a large ego. He should have a large ego. He's the biggest combat sports athlete on
it's
the
difficult
planet.
not to have a large ego when
Right?
you play
And
sports.
He's deserved of a lot of things because of his platform and what he's built. Now, you talk about his losses. You want to talk about Dustin Poirier.
Mm-hmm.
One legitimate loss that I was at my well, actually they were both legitimate. Like Poirier was beating him in the second fight, but it ended with the broken leg. He lost to Khabib. I mean, you're talking, I lost to Poirier.
Mm-hmm.
Would I have beaten Khabib? I don't know. Freaking good.
Yeah.
He was good, right? So
Undefeated.
you talk it, and that's where I say, and I challenge everybody who says Conor doesn't want hard fights. He wants the easy fights. He wants a tune-up. He didn't have to take the Khabib fight. He didn't have to take Poirier, knowing Poirier was the legit number 2 guy in the world, could on any given night be the champion, be the best lightweight on the planet. I just lost to him, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy is good. So you talk about this, Conor's been out for almost 2 years at this point with an injury. Before that, it was long stretches because of, whether it be Mayweather, or whether it be doing movies or doing all the other stuff. Conor never needs to come back. For a lot of the fighters, we have to come back in 6 months to get that paycheck, get the sponsors, blah,
Right.
blah, blah.
And he's made a bunch of money.
A bunch of money. So, so his strength of schedule is indicative of saying that's why I'm sitting in this chair right now, saying that Conor wants the toughest fights and the toughest challenges under the brightest lights. He wants people to count him out. He wants people to say, dang, man, the legend of Conor, someday when he hangs up the gloves, when my name is on his list and Poirier and Khabib, the trilogy, or the 2 fights with Diaz probably ending up in a trilogy, fighting Floyd Mayweather in boxing, that ain't an easy schedule whatsoever. A matter of fact, I would venture to say it's a very, very tough strength of schedule. So it remains to be seen who wins later on this year.
Man, it'll be an incredible fight. That's for sure. I'm
just excited about the buildup, man. Like I'm about to go into this Ultimate Fighter house,
right?
And,
and
get in it, because I don't know how much interaction you have with, like, say what is it, a defensive end is kind of your main guy you're fighting every day, like in a game.
Yeah,
right.
Your interactions I'll see on Sunday.
Yeah,
I think there's obviously a lot more repetition. I play 17 games in a year as opposed to you playing 3 or 4.
Yeah,
right.
But it's a fight
but you play guys twice a year. Sometimes you play guys play guys 2 times in 3 weeks.
But to me, it's a fight. Like you guys are literally fighting each other. Every single one of those.
Yeah.
And
you learn them, you watch them. There's strategy and everything. You find out their strengths, your strengths, like how can they beat you, and then you try to take away said fastball.
And now imagine being stuck with that guy in Vegas and being forced into these scenarios where it's like, okay, hey, here's this scenario, here's what we're doing. It's a challenge, or it's this or it's that. Figure it out. And you're like, I don't want to figure anything out with you, dude. Get the freak out of my face.
I've always been a much more of a talker in those situations. So I would welcome those in most situations. I've always enjoyed the art of talking shit to somebody in a football game, which is where you said, like, hey, the fight's 90% mental.
Yep.
So, and you say Conor's been doing this for so long. He is calloused. He's weathered the storm multiple times, as opposed to you say you've weathered the storm 0 times.
Yep.
So where do you get yourself at mentally where he cannot puncture your armor?
It's a great question. I think ultimately the trust that I have in myself to rise to the level of the occasion that is at hand.
Mm-hmm.
Showing up in Vegas, and having the trust in myself that I'm going to deal with it with whatever comes my way. Ultimately realizing that talk is cheap. Trying not to let anything bother me.
Mm-hmm.
But also realizing that it is a mental game, realizing that I've seen people get under Conor's skin.
Being aware of the game we're playing.
Yeah, and that's why Conor is so interesting, because he's always been so interested in what is going on. He does his research. I guarantee right now he's already done some research on me, who I've lost to, how I've lost to them. The fact that I was in the quote unquote B leagues for all these years, and then I come in, like all these different things that, But I also know those things about myself, right? The old Eminem 8 Mile, you know?
Right.
I
You gotta
am
some
white.
shit to yourself.
I am a fucking bum.
Yeah.
I did, yo.
That's what you got to do in the beginning.
Yeah, right. You know, it's like
Shit
like
on yourself so much at the beginning. Connor's like, God, I don't know what to do.
know what to say.
And now he just has fumbled
Yeah, I
words
already
and he can't
said that,
enunciate
idiot.
very
I already
well.
said that about myself, idiot.
Yeah. Hey, what'd you say?
Hey, what'd you say?
Yeah.
I'm just joking.
Yeah. But there's also the personal aspect. You come at your family, come at your kids, come at all that stuff. And that is tough for any man to weather that storm and not be able to
that
take.
happens. Someone's probably getting smacked. Like, let's be honest. Like, ultimately, there's just lines that you don't cross.
But what is strategically the best thing for you to do if you go into this type of situation? You tell your wife, hey, he might say things about you. He may say things about my two sons. Like, I have to be able to handle this from a strategical standpoint to make sure when we get in the octagon, that's where we get our vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have to maybe go through that? Maybe tell your family, because that is, we saw Conor after his legs at a 90-degree angle, and he's talking about Dustin Poirier's wife in his DMs.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And all that stuff, calling her a whore and all that shit. Like, that stuff can happen. Bree could be called a whore in this situation.
Yeah, it's gonna be bad. But
and I'm saying that. I'm seeing you light up, and I'm just saying it could be said.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do we handle that?
Ultimately, I'm going into it not thinking it's going to happen, never expecting it to happen, so that I can just either lose it,
Fair enough,
or be like, oh, okay, it just happened, and
you
whatever
just
happens,
that little
now,
shot on the button right there, knock him out right away, and be like, hey, I've already done it once.
I do need to figure that out. Like, hey, Dana, Hunter, like, hey, ESPN. If we do get in a fight and I've knocked this dude out here at the thing, I don't know if it's going to get aired or not because it might take away from the fight, but like we can still fight, right? Like, it doesn't because, you know, sometimes like that happens at fights, the actual fights where the commission can be like, oh, you and me got in a fight at weigh-ins, we're scrapping this fight. You know, but ultimately this is a reality
unless somebody gets injured.
So there is no, I guess there's probably a commission involved. I don't really know, but yeah, commissioner. But anyways, ultimately expecting it not to happen, but being prepared for it to happen. And also visualizing and seeing myself, seeing red, and then whatever happens. Like sometimes the human spirit takes over. Sometimes you think you're in a fight and you just go.
Right.
You know? Ultimately, like I said, I'm not expecting it to happen, but I will be pleasantly surprised if it does.
Pleasantly surprised if it does.
And luckily, I have the most mentally strong freaking water off a duck's back wife ever. Like she is like. She's excited for this. She's pumped for this. She's excited for me. She knows all about this. She knows the enemy territory in which I'm going into and already have gone into as soon as that phone call came in and now that it's announced. So ultimately, she's excited for it. I said, hey, pull your hat down tight because this is about to be a fun ride for the next 8 months. And then we kind of see what happens next. Like fun as in, ups, downs, like rage.
I'll put Bree against Connor's girl
for sure.
Every time.
Bree's a freaking
we should have
savage.
A twofer there.
Bree's a savage.
She is. She's got that shit about her.
She does. Quiet.
What's that?
Co-main event.
The co-main
event. Yeah.
Hey, quiet killer. My wife is. So
she is. She was fired up when she was spilling the beans on you a couple of days ago.
Yeah, she loves doing that. Like, hey, you gonna tell them? Okay. Well, hey, here's you guys. Here's what's going on. But oh yeah.
When as a like I've said before, I've already kind of given the insurance policy that I don't know a lot about MMA, but you look at length and how long he is compared to how long you are. How do you navigate getting in there to present yourself with those types of situations to give yourself the strikes to end in a knockout shot?
It's a good question. So in mixed martial arts, a lot of times in grappling too, when you're on top of somebody, you want to be all the way in or all the way out. It's that middle ground where submissions happens. He throws up a triangle. He throws up an arm bar. He throws up one of these things that you can get caught in. Striking is very similar for a guy like me. You look at Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson always fought guys who were taller than him because he was what? 5'10", 5'11". Yeah. He was an undersized
weasel his way in there, dude.
And he would come in and get in your face, be close enough to hit you, and almost too close for you to hit me because of your length. 5'10", Mike Tyson is. Job, Hove. So ultimately, oh, sorry.
Jack.
Good job. Good job, Jack. Good job, Stash Jack.
Jack just put his hands up.
Oh, never mind. Anyways, so you navigate it by either being all the way in his face or all the way out. Ultimately, you see the way that I fight. I like to be as close to you as humanly possible. Number one, I have a lot of power in tight. My short shots are, pretty hard compared to a guy like him who's got a lot more length and a lot more, I guess, trajectory for his arms to hit me. Now, with that being said, Conor does a very good job of stepping right back and hitting you with a counter shot. Like case in point, Jose Aldo. Case in point, Chad Mendes. Case in point, Eddie Alvarez. I mean, every single one of the awesome knockouts we've seen of Conor is when a guy is coming in, overextends himself, Conor steps back a little bit, just barely touches his beard, and then boom, puts your lights out. So when it comes to length, everybody that I've fought thus far has been taller than me, in the UFC especially. I've very rarely even fought anybody in my career who has been shorter than me. So I've navigated it really well, but ultimately getting in his face metaphorically and physically right away from the bell to bell, and then we see who crumbles first.
What are we looking at here?
175 centimeter. Oh,
yeah, I don't know much about
74 inches. 175
metric system,
centimeters in Ireland, but that's 5'9".
74 inches.
Yeah. So ultimately, Conor looks a lot longer than me because of his frame, and he's more slender than I am. I think Conor is maybe a half inch taller than me. He looks a lot bigger on his, Instagrams and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's nothing for point of reference.
It's gonna be. I think it's a very well matched fight. It's your classic clash between wrestler, more stocky, more power shots compared to precision timing, and honestly, just a more experienced and seasoned striker. That doesn't mean he's always going to win the striking battle, but I think in his mind he's the much better striker. So let's go out there, stand toe to toe, and see what happens right there in the middle of Vegas.
Right in the middle of Vegas. So, how does this fight go?
The bell rings. I am the first one to the center of the octagon. He definitely takes the first backward step, which is not necessarily outside of his game plan. He's not a constantly in your face, come forward kind of guy. Ultimately, he does a very good job of getting the timing and the distance and wait. He knows that I'm going to be more offensive than I am defensive. So he's going to wait for the shots. He's going to wait for the punches coming in. I don't think he's going to expect my speed or my power when they do land. Ultimately, I think I hit him with some really hard shots and make him second guess himself right away, take him out of his game plan, and TKO him in a round and a half. Second round. That's the prediction. Write it down.
So round and a half.
Second
round TKO.
Round and a half. Mystic Mike. Mystic Mike.
Brother, this has been an electric 42 minutes.
It's been good.
We on the bus are rooting for you. We will be there. We will be at the fight. There is not a dollar amount that will keep me away from being on the side of that arena watching you take down Conor McGregor. I'm so excited for you.
I thought this was an us thing.
There is not a dollar amount that'll keep us away from seeing you.
Yes.
On the side of the octagon. Boys, let's get those GoFundMes going, all right?
We did it, baby.
It's going to be expensive.
It is.
I cannot wait. This has been talked about for months and months and months and months. Even when you first got the UFC, there was always, what about Conor? What about Conor? Like, it could happen someday. And then as it just kept growing, you have built yourself quite the brand. You have built yourself quite the opportunity. And you just got to capitalize. Once you capitalize, here's a question for you. You do exactly what you just did. You step up in the center of that octagon. You make Conor McGregor second guess himself. You get him in a round and a half. What happens for Mike Chandler after that?
At that point, cashing in on the platform, the eyeballs, and the attention, kind of seeing what is next. Big fights. Ultimately, this is a pit stop out of the path to the title. I still think after I finish beat Conor, I think I'm a fight away from getting the title shot. I could be, that could be a fool's errand. It could be wishful thinking, but I still want the title. So you get the Conor fight and winning the title within a year span. That's my dream scenario, and I think that is realistic. But ultimately, we got a very fun 8 months ahead of us.
Brother, we do.
So it's gonna be a lot of fun. So I'll keep the boys abreast to everything that's going on. Maybe maybe you guys come out to Vegas. We do a little Vegas edition. We'll see.
Boys love Vegas.
The boys love Vegas.
The boys love Vegas.
Let it ride, baby.
We can let that thing ride. We are happy to be a part of anything about your experience, but this is truly your experience, and we'll be as much a part of it or as little part of it as you want us to be. We are so excited for you. We're so excited for your family. We're so excited for your bank account. We're so excited for your legacy, brother. This is going to be amazing. Appreciate you coming on. This is huge.
Yes, sir. Thank you, boys.
You guys are amazing. Please subscribe, rate 5 stars, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, all the whole things. McGregor, Chandler, coming this fall.
Let's go.